Greetings and welcome again to another luncheon plenary. Today we're going to be graced with the presence of one I like to call one of my other daughters, right? She likes to use the term favorite cousin. The illustrious, honorable Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Please just raise your hand for a second. Yay! And to set a particular intention, I'd like you to listen to a particular sound. We didn't want to have it not in sync, so I would like for persons to at least listen to this particular sound by Benjamin Zephaniah, and it's called This World. If you feel like you need to stand up and take a little movement, you're welcome to do so. We're trying to shift the intention before we get ready to hear some powerful words from Dr. Alexis, right?
We live in a world where 1 in 4 people live in a state of absolute poverty. 35,000 children die each day because they are born to poor parents. Each year, 24,000 people are killed and maimed by landmines. And when you hear the information which telling you that the world is wired and getting smaller, remember, many people in the world have never made a phone call. We live in a world where they say we communicate more, but the world stayed silent when the slave trade was making money. The world stayed silent when the Nazis started to kill trade unionists, people with disabilities, homosexuals, left-handed people and Jews. And now, in the age of the global village and mass communications, the world is staying silent as the Palestinians are being annihilated. Countries are isolated and starved of funds if they do not allow North American burgers to be sold on their high streets, or if they do not allow the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund to dominate and control their poor farmers. We live in a world where over 1 million children each year die as a result of diarrhea. In this world, millions of women spend several hours each day collecting water. Of the 774 million illiterate adults in the world, 2/3 of them are women. More than 60 million girls in our world are forced into marriage before the age of 18. And each year in this world, 358,000 women die from pregnancy or in childbirth. And in this world, more than 100 million women are simply missing.
I need it for us to be in the right space when we talk about this world and when we talk about transforming our Caribbean and some of the realities. Did you hear all the data? Did you hear the data sets? And it related to everybody in the room, whether it's children, males, females, transgender, all of that. Did we hear that? Right? And I think it's important that we bring that to light. So with that being said, Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs is cherished by a wide range of communities as an oracle and as a vessel of love. Drawing on over 25 years of experience as a writer and facilitator, her inclusive practice finds us and brings us into the ceremonies we have always needed. Her books include Undrowned, Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals, aka Press 2020, Dub, Finding Ceremony, Duke Press 2020. M Archive, After the End of the World, Duke Press 2018. Spill, Scenes of Black Feminist Fugitivity, I like that, Duke Press 2016. And Revolutionary Mothering, Love on the Front Lines, PM Press 2016. Dr. Alexis recently won the 2023 Wyndham Campbell Prize in Poetry. Whoop, 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 whoop. Following in the footsteps of some of her favorite poets, including Dion Brand and Kwame Dawes. The Anguilla Literary Festival called Dr. Alexis the Pride of Anguilla. Dr. Alexis was honored with a Writing Award in Nonfiction in 2022 and lauded for creating, quote, modern fables that offer new methods of feeling, unquote. Dr. Alexis was also the 2022 National Endowment of the Arts Creative Writing Fellow. Whoop, 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 whoop. Whoa. This could go on for a while, like I said. I'm glad it's just the short version. In 2020 to 2021, Dr. Alexis was awarded a National Humanities Center Fellowship to work on her forthcoming biography, The Eternal Life of Audre Lorde. Wow. Audre's smiling. Woo! Dr. Alexis and her partner, Sangodare, did I say it properly? Okay, have received many honors, including an Advocate 40 Under 40 feature for their decade of work to create an intergenerational living library of Black LGBTQ brilliance called Mobile Homecoming. Dr. Alexis lives in Durham, North Carolina, where she nurtures and is nurtured by a visionary, creative community while scheming towards her dream of being your favorite cousin. Let us welcome Dr. Alexis Pauline Gumbs. Woo!
Wow. 1 second ago, there was no one in here. Y'all filled this room. Wow. So honored to be here. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. Okay, so we're going to do a few things. Let's start with breathing. So I invite you to do what supports your breathing. If that means having 2 feet on the ground, if it means putting something down, folks in the other room, if that means don't take a bite right now lest you choke. Just get ready. And I'm going to take 5 breaths. I'm going to mark my inhale and my exhale, and you can breathe along with me, or you could just notice your next 5 breaths at your own pace. Here we go. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. One more time, inhaling. Let this be the loud one, exhaling. Okay. Okay. And let's dedicate our participation to someone who's not in one of these 2 rooms, but who is part of why you're showing up today with your open heart and full of love. So this might be someone who is living now. It might be someone who lived before. It may be someone who's older than you or younger than you, someone who really wishes they could be at CSA with us, someone who you're going to talk about this with afterwards, someone who brings out your best self. I'm dedicating my participation to my mother, Pauline Mackenzie, and I'm grateful to her for so many reasons, but I'm especially grateful that she raised me to love our people, to love myself, and to understand that love is the center of everything. So that's my dedication. And I want to invite you to turn to your neighbor, find a neighbor, and let them know who you're dedicating to. And you can say also a little bit about why. We're just going to take 2 minutes. People in the other room, you too. Bless the food with this dedication. Okay, go for it. Another minute with your partner. Okay, so please thank your partner, thank anyone who listened to you. Okay, so we're going to do a few things. I am here to honor Dr. Gloria Joseph and the great Audre Lorde. And I know there are people here who have been in relationship with Dr. Joseph and with Audre Lorde. Would you raise your hands? 2 hands, yes. So grateful for the way that you carry their love and their energy and their legacy and offer them forward and share them with us. And as I was standing here, of course, I just be getting ancestral instructions. So I'm going to do something a little different than what I initially planned to do. But what we're going to do is I'm going to share briefly some excerpts from The Eternal Life of Audre Lorde, the biography of Audre Lorde that I'm so excited to have written. That will be in the world next summer. And that will be some context, but we'll also be having an interactive oracle that draws on Audre Lorde and Gloria Joseph's collaborative work, which I consider to be Hugo, especially some of the images from Hell Under God's Orders, and The Wind is Spirit, and Undersong, and The Marvelous Arithmetics of Distance, Audre Lorde's final works that she created here in St. Croix. But this, I'm going to read for some context. It's like they asked me to do it. And so folks who were at the round table yesterday, you already heard this, but it's short. And they insisted, so it's always yes. Y'all still breathing? Yes. Okay. I can actually see you people in the other room. Okay. You know, teacher things. Signs of water wear creep at the edges. Patterns of dust find their own stability and shape. Some have already evolved into after images of mold. I touch them carefully, these copies of Audre Lorde's books that survived the hurricanes, shipped back from St. Croix into my hands. Audre's own copies of the books she wrote. These are treasures. The guidebooks say I should wipe them with denatured alcohol, but first I breathe in the smell of dirt after rain. I sit in a clinically clean temporary office in Minnesota, but my lungs remember how salt air in the Caribbean rots the engines out of new cars, how the sun sometimes takes as much as it gives. These small collections of thread and tree pulp have started to return to the matter of life renewing itself. I spread them out across my office floor gingerly, so as not to disturb the microorganic skin cells and sand particles that made it through the shipping process. I long for a microscope to find the fingerprints, the pressure and release, the evidence of survival. Instead, I reach for my phone. I choose a high contrast filter and send Dr. Gloria Joseph a selfie of me laying on the floor with the books surrounding my head, crowned for a moment by this slightly distressed rainbow. The threadbare maroon cloth of a once soaked hardback, chosen poems old and new. The bold red of the second edition of Zami faded only across the spine. The blood words, "Our dead behind us," over the black and white image of 3 elder Amazon warriors. Coal, silver, like the moon through soot. The washed out yellow of the first German translation of a burst of light that must have been sitting in a window. The blue clouds of the American edition of the same book. The black of Hugo, hell under God's orders, flecked with a light show of fleeting dashes. The beige of an uncorrected proof of undersong that has known both floodwater and sun. The creased sky blue, or is that Caribbean sea blue, of Sister Outsider. The gray scale of 3 copies of Cables to Rage, folded into staples, now sienna with rust. From the best angle my wrist can manage, it looks like Audre is looking back at me, skeptical, in triplicate, through her black framed glasses on the cover of Cables to Rage. "How did you do it?" I whisper, reluctant to get up off the floor. "How did you survive?" Inside the front cover of each book, Dr. Gloria Joseph wrote, "April 2018, to Alexis, in memory of Audre," and signed her own name. And so that message becomes part of the matter of these particular copies of these particular books, a clue that I might have something to do with their renewal, their next life. If not for the date and identical pen, I might have wondered if these books were once meant for a different Alexis, specifically Alexis DeVoe, Gloria Joseph's former student, my mentor, Audre Lorde's first biography, but I didn't ask that question. Who am I to help these books return to themselves, I thought. But I didn't ask that question either. I simply sent the picture and a promise to steward these books along with other artifacts Dr. Joseph mailed over the years so that generations could hold the fragile and eternal life of Audre Lorde. By the time Gloria Joseph sent me the package in 2018, the books had collectively been through more than one storm. In September 2011, when I arrived from the airport here in St. Croix to live and work in the home where Audre Lorde wrote her last books and took her last breaths, Doc Joseph and Helga Emde rushed around, barricading their windows for yet another hurricane. None of the storms in between were as powerful as Hugo, but like our bodies, books respond to changes in pressure, humidity in air. They swell, exhale, and dry again, stretched beyond words. I don't know what it looked like in that same house in the upscale subdivision in Judith's Fancy 7 years later, when in her process of moving out, Doc Joseph decided to mail me these books. I consider it a miracle that at almost 90 years old, or maybe at 90, or maybe at 91, depending on who you ask, and struggling with moving out of a house that we all hoped would become a museum shrine, Doc Joseph thought to post me these creased, folded, annotated books. And then when they were returned to her due to some shipping error, she put the box inside another box and mailed it again. Doc Joseph never corrected the people in the streets of St. Croix who assumed I was her granddaughter. She just stood her full 6 feet tall and laughed out loud. She didn't correct the people in St. Croix who assumed that Audre Lorde was her sister and not her lover. When she got my selfie, Doc Joseph emailed back quickly. Receiving your email this morning brought joy to my soul, body, and psyche. In a few months, Doc Joseph knocked on the door of death and then miraculously recovered after we all said goodbye. Almost a year later, she departed for good at the age of 91 or 92, depending on who you ask, during hurricane season. Ibaye, thank you. And so this is the love story part. I call this honey. It starts with an epigraph from Audre Lorde's journal. I am an anachronism, a sport, an oddity, me and the bee. It was never meant to fly. The bee is dead. It has become scientific instead of magic. I am not supposed to exist, but I do. The year Audre Lorde was born, a French entomologist named Antoine Magan announced his theory. Bees should not be able to fly. He argued that bees were aerodynamically impossible. Small wings flapping slowly on such relatively large bodies. In flight, bees completely ignore the dynamics of weight, lift, drag, and thrust that Magan and other Western scientists felt so confident about in the wake of the 20th century invention of the airplane. So the lie spread. Bees are impossible. The rumor is still circulating, thanks to the bee movie, but that's a footnote. And the bees don't care. Wait. How many black men in Harlem fed their Depression-era born daughters with dreams that they could become doctors or lawyers or teachers? At least one. Byron Lorde believed that anything was possible with enough education. Anybody else have a father like that? I do. He ensured Audre Lorde access to a high school built on that same belief. Hunter High School for Girls trained girls that could do anything, be anything, or so they were allowed to think for their 4 years. Soon, Audre had the evidence of her own tokenized presence to teach her that what the elite of New York City could learn, she could learn too, if she wanted. During those same years, Audre watched science and technology transform rapidly to meet the demands of a world at war. She read research reports and science fiction about the possibility of time travel and space travel, while she benefited from educational access beyond what her parents and grandparents could have dreamed. She took flights of fancy in her journal and wrote poetry every day. Flight was not impossible for Audre. It was happening, wasn't it? Maybe that is our clue. Growing up in the home of Linda and Byron, for Audre, flight was not only possible, it was necessary. She felt awe, attachment, and admiration for her mother, but she also sensed that she had to get out of her mother's domain in order to breathe. The impossible thing she wanted, a home that didn't activate her flight reflex, full acceptance from her sisters and her mother as exactly who she was, to be a free Black woman, fully loved and seen by the Black women directly around her. Is that a scientific impossibility? Somewhere where Audre couldn't see her, little Gloria Ida Joseph was growing up in a striving West Indian household in New York too. Great niece of one of the most famous number runners of all time, Gloria knew something about windfalls and the mathematics of dreams. Her parents sent her to Catholic schools early on, just like the Lordes. The things Gloria did with a basketball, with a field hockey stick. The white girls on the other team would have called it sorcery, Black magic. Her involvement in the Black Studies uprising at Cornell University, her founding role in Black Studies at Hampshire College. Gloria knew something about the mass and measures of obstacles shaped like white people and what you do with them. You jump higher, or if you can, you charge right through. Audre Lorde's poem, The Bees, questions human aggression towards bees. In a scene that Lorde either witnessed or imagined, a group of boys violently destroy a beehive by throwing stones at it until it falls to the ground. They then demolish the hive with broomsticks, eventually trampling the whole bee community into the earth. This is one of Lorde's most graphic critiques of human separation from nature. And the violent separation in the poem is a masculine learned behavior. What the children learn possesses them, she writes. The little boys thrill at the destruction, but there is another vision, a feminine question at work already in elementary school. One little girl points out that the bees never harmed the kids. We could have studied honey making, she proposes. In one of her nightmares, Audre was in a dirty school building, in a crowded room, full of women arguing. She didn't trust anyone. Could anyone else hear that sound in the room, the menacing buzz of a tiny bee? When she woke up from the dream, she was still in another dream. But later that morning, she wrote it down to reflect. What could her anxiety about something so small and powerful teach her about trust, disgust, what it meant to be in a community of women? Is there something nourishing to learn on the other side of our fear? The term Africanized honeybee names a dynamic started by a capitalist breeder of bees in the 1970s. Not unlike colonizers in earlier centuries, a particular capitalist speculator thought a certain breed of honeybees in southern Africa was more productive than the European bees already imported into the United States. Like segregationists of yore, he and his investors believed that if these African bees could be used for their labor and kept completely separate from European bees, the economic gain for the honey market would be astounding. And as the architects of slavery and settler colonialism forgot to learn the first time, but we in the Caribbean know, that is not how the birds and the bees works. All the different bees interbred without permission, causing a panic in the corporate beekeeping hierarchy and on the nightly news. What is the number of bees in the Americas that are Africanized, or which could be called killer bees by sensationalist newscasters in the 1970s? Do you know? No one knows. Geneticists say there is no level of genetic contribution agreed upon to determine whether a bee is a killer bee or not. Sounds like some type of apiary version of the one-drop rule to me. Some say that Africanized bees are dangerous because not only will they kick a European queen out of her hive and put an Africanized queen in her place, or worse for the segregationists, fertilize a European queen so she has Africanized babies, they are also supposedly more defensive, more likely to swarm. The whole hive will abscond together for safety. If the hive is attacked, a higher percentage of them are willing to die to protect the next generations. They chase attackers to their hive further away, and they sting them more so they don't come back. Africanized. Some would say these bees are simply more communal, more cohesive as a macroorganism. Food justice organizer Zachary Curtis, also known online as the Afro-queerized beekeeper, says they offer a model for collaboration that can teach us all something. Their venom is identical to the venom of a European honeybee, but they move together with more agility, take care of each other better. Killer of what? Dangerous to whom? Drag. So we got weight, we got drag, we got lift, we got thrust. Those are the aerodynamics, in case you forgot the beginning. Okay. It is not that Audre had to put on a heavy costume to be a Black woman engaged in the work of loving across the barbed wires of interpersonal racism. That's not what I mean by drag. I mean that as she recalibrated her energy to face the heavy pull of cancer, Audre Lorde started to see that if she was going to live her purpose, she would have to let go of every story that prevented her from loving herself. If she believed anywhere in her being that it was impossible to truly make a life with a Black woman, how could she live with herself? Maybe she didn't even realize she held these beliefs until it was time to let them go. Returning to the Caribbean, the lifelong dream of her mother, not feasible. Living in a primary relationship with another Black woman of equal strength, terrifying. Or, meanwhile, Gloria Joseph was changing her own life. Once she had tenure at Hampshire College, she moved to St. Croix, the majority Black land of her ancestors, and bought a house in a subdivision called Judith's Fancy, an area once reserved mostly for white American and European expatriates. She started to organize conferences and gatherings for Caribbean women writers, including at UVI. And for some reason, I think it was a farming grant, but also maybe because someone suggested that she couldn't do it, she also decided to raise honeybees. Lift. As of this writing, bees in the Americas are struggling. The entire food system is at risk because some of the most important pollinators are dying off in droves due to pollution and human-impelled global warming. On top of this, bees are experiencing something called colony collapse. That's in quotes because it's poetic on its own. I didn't make that be poetic. Colony collapse. In some cases, 90% of the hive disappears in one season. If bees, butterflies, and other pollinators don't survive to connect plants to each other through pollen reproduction, no flowering plants, including the food-bearing plants that we and other animals depend on for our nourishment, can persist. There are a number of factors impacting this massive die-off of bees, including the abusive practices of large-scale honey producers who treat bees as brutally as American corporations treat other livestock. But one important factor in the collapse of beehives is the introduction of a new form of pesticides called neonicotinoids. Agricultural institutions tested the pesticides and found that contact with them didn't kill bees, at least not directly. It wasn't until widespread use of these pesticides started that they realized that neonicotinoids kill bees indirectly by harming their ability to navigate. They leave the hive to pollinate and never return. They die of starvation when they can't find their way back home. Gloria Joseph invited Audre Lorde to speak at her class at Hampshire College. Gloria Joseph invited Audre and Toni Cade Bambara and Adrienne Rich to come to St. Croix to be the keynote speakers at a feminist conference she organized. She invited Audre and James Baldwin to have a conversation on Hampshire's campus, a long and wide-ranging 5-hour conversation that lives on through a small fragment published as Revolutionary Hope in Essence magazine. "I just knew it," Audre said to James Baldwin during that conversation. "If I lived, I was going to have to do it alone." But every time Gloria sent an invitation, Audre said yes, Audre said yes, Audre said yes. And when Audre said, "Come with me to Grenada to find out what really happened," and when Audre said, "Come to Europe with me, let's summer in Berlin," Gloria said yes too. From 1981 to 1992, Gloria Joseph was a major part of Audre Lorde's life. "Audre, before me, would you ever let anyone laugh at you?" Gloria asked Audre during one of their visits to Berlin. Audre shook her head, holding the word pressed between her lips, trying not to smile until she finally laughed it out. "No." In 1986, Audre and Gloria went on vacation together to the small island of Anguilla, you know I have to mention it, where Gloria had been many times before. While there, Audre felt her spirit pulling her, teaching her something about home. It was possible, she finally realized, to actually live in the Caribbean, not just to visit. Home was physically possible and urgently necessary for her body, which was tired from fighting cancer and the cold and stress of New York City. Audre and Gloria decided to live together here in St. Croix in Judith's Fancy, in that house Gloria had bought. Another theoretical impossibility achieved. As they say, level unlocked. Thrust. And this is an epigraph from Audre Lorde's poem, A Meeting of the Minds. "The walls are written in honey in the dream." On a visit to St. Croix, Toni Cade Bambara, the great writer who I'm assuming everybody knows who Toni Cade Bambara is, but if you don't know, you get to find out. Toni Cade Bambara named Gloria Joseph's honey enterprise Doc Locks Honey after Doc Joseph's dreadlocked hair, and the sweet name stuck. Gloria sent shipments of honey to Toni and her daughter Karma. When Audre moved to St. Croix, she became part of the beekeeping group. She put on full beekeeping regalia and leather bee gloves and worked alongside Joseph and a team of heterosexual Black men here in this community. The whole experience was sensual for Lorde. Pulling the frames out of the hives, removing the wax, spinning each frame in the extractor, the smell of honey, the sound of laughter, the joy of being a small group of Black people in collaboration with the tiny magicians who make sugar out of dance. Gloria remembers Audre describing it as, quote, "an experience of rapturous joy," as she breathed in the honey archive of all the flirty flowered pollination on the island. Who knew life with progressed cancer could be this sweet? Audre and Gloria breaking open a coconut to drink it. Audre and Gloria cutting mangoes and winking about Bessie Smith in the kitchen. Audre and Gloria laughing loudly, talking over each other. Audre and Gloria at home. Sadiq Abdullah, another member of the Beekeeping Collective, remembers that his mentor, known locally as Honeyman — anybody know Sadiq? Anybody know Honeyman here? Yes? Honeyman developed a big crush on Audre. One day, Honeyman even pulled out his banjo and serenaded her, complete with suggestive thrusting movements below the waist. Audre never would have accepted such behavior from a heterosexual black man in New York City. But here, she decided no one was harmed. I admit, I was flattered in a peculiar way. Unlike the female honeybees who kick the males out to die once they've fulfilled their reproductive function, Audre's experience of beekeeping made way for another theoretical possibility: safe and even playful black lesbian feminist friendships with politically incorrect straight black men. Really, everything is possible. So, ultimately, for Audre, her experience with beekeeping did center the divine, sensual femininity of honey. Honey is the nectar of Oshun. I know there's some Oshun people in here. Yoruba goddess of abundance, sensuality, and fertility. Audre's poem about the long dream of honey making finally fulfilled is called Production. Sweet creeps like bees through each crack of hot air. A local artist worked with Audre to make a broadside of that poem, brown on a yellow background. It shows a geometric honeycomb curving into a suggestive feminine opening. One thick drop of honey oozes out. For all those years, the supremacy of airplanes hid the secret of what bees were already doing. It was true. If they wanted to fly like planes, the bees would have been doomed. But why would bees want to fly like airplanes when they already knew something older, sweeter? Of course a honeybee can fly. It's easy. All she has to do is shape the air around her into a million tiny hurricanes. Thank you. Okay, so there are more parts of the biography, obviously, that talk about Dr. Joseph and Audre Lorde, but we are going to move to the oracle component, which is what I prefer to the regular Q&A, and you already have done most of it. So we did our breathing, you did your dedication. If you weren't here for the dedication part, think of someone who is not part of this conversation physically, but who is a part of this conversation in another way. And then just think of the impossibility that you're facing. And this is what I call the Lordean question, like the question that might make your voice shake, the place where you really are in your breakthrough, because everyone's always having a breakthrough in some area of our lives, and you know what it is for you. It's the place where you feel like what Audre Lorde said, an oddity, a sport, an impossibility. I am not supposed to exist, but I do. That area of your life, which might be work-related, it might be in your relationships, it might be spiritual, it might be cosmic, it might be agricultural, I don't know. But you know, and I want you to think of that place, and that's the place where you're going to seek guidance from the oracle. So just take a moment. You're not going to have to turn to a neighbor and tell them, so just do the really scary one. And think of it now. And when you have it, think of a number between 1 and 21 that you associate with it, or that's just your favorite number, or it's just a number that pops into your mind right now. Okay, so 2 of you have the opportunity to share your scary breakthrough as vaguely or as specifically as you want with the group and your number between 1 and 21, and I'm going to share those 2 artifacts because we got to move on to the next things. Who would like to share their breakthrough and their number? Yes. Let me pass you this.
Hi, thank you so much for just guiding this meditation. And I'm going to breathe. My name is Isa Cosette Diaz, and my breakthrough is my dissertation. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Puerto Rico. I'm trying to just center myself and finish hopefully by August, and my number is 3.
Congratulations. Anybody else feel like their dissertation was impossible and then wrote a dissertation? Anyone in here? I know some of you all, and I knew some of y'all when you were writing your dissertation, so yes. We are a witness. It's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible. Okay, so our third artifact is It makes sense. Boom. Making herself heard. So the third artifact is from, listen, your intuition is on 100,000 trillion. A poem that Audre Lorde wrote and then revised it in her book Undersong while she lived here in St. Croix. The poem is called Release Time. Okay? So first of all, it's release time. And the stanza that I'm going to offer you is, the threat of public school always hanging over us, making me want to believe the slight faces of magic marooned in an ocean of black. So first of all, it's beautiful. Second of all, it connects to some of the educational trauma that Audre Lorde experienced in majority white schools when she was in Catholic school, and the threat was, oh, then now you have to go to the public school, so you have to accept what you're experiencing, and she experienced a lot of racism in that context, and so did Dr. Joseph. And so in this poem, she's allowing herself and giving herself space to think about what were the beliefs that she created to survive that set of circumstances that now she can release. So that's also the question for you, and you can do it, and congratulations on your dissertation. So that's how it works. I wish we could do all 21, but we're going to do one more. So who next wants to share their breakthrough and their number? And also everyone else who chose 3, you got the message, right? A lot of people tend to choose 3. Okay. Yes.
Hi, I'm Mariposa. My breakthrough is that I am a finalist for a full-time faculty position in the Department of English at Lehman College, where Audre Lorde taught and also experienced a lot of racism. And my number is 13. Sorry, my number is 13.
Got it. I mean, and 3, because, because that's very relevant, because when Audre Lorde was teaching at Lehman College, she was teaching teachers in training, and it was a majority white set of teachers training to teach in majority Black and Latino schools in New York City, and she taught their first courses on structural racism, and they were not trying to hear it. So that's also relevant to you, for sure. And then 13, is okay, cool. So 13 is a photo. So in Hugo, the anthology, Hell Under God's Orders, which Gloria Joseph and Hortense Rao created because they wanted to counter the narratives that mass media, especially US mass media, was spreading about Hurricane Hugo, about what actually happened, about the aftermath and the response. There are accounts from some people, and yesterday in the session, there are definitely many people here who survived Hugo, and there are photos, and some of the photos were taken by Audre Lorde. This is one of those photos. I'm going to describe it, but this is the caption that Dr. Joseph put. Residents getting their drinking water from military desalination unit at the Christiansted Wharf. This is my description of this photo. A white woman bends over, looking at water jugs on the ground. Her hands are behind her back. Can she move water with her forehead? The desalination unit looks like a tank, not a water tank, a war tank. The buildings in the distance look small in comparison, and the clouds in the sky are not offering what you need, which is water. Though not so long ago, the heavens opened and soaked through 90% of the ceilings on the island. The clouds in the sky are empty laughter and do not offer what you need, which is water. So the people have to drink from the sea. And then these are my questions for Audre, but they're my questions for me, and they're my questions for all of you, and they're especially my questions for you. How are you a mechanism for getting the salt out? How are you still making us let go of whatever components of our compound makeup stop us from hydrating the future, cleansing the collective? How are you the homes in the background, home itself made small by need, home yet unimaginable until we overcome our drying mouths and speak? How are you the white woman with her hands behind her back? Is whiteness the problem of not knowing what to do with your hands? Not knowing how to lift what's right in front of you? Or has the water always been too heavy to move alone? What part of you is waiting for someone else to do what is necessary for your life? What part of you is waiting for me? That's it. Thank you all very much.
So I can tend to be the one that carries around stuff a lot, right? So Audre used to come to Central High School right here in St. Croix and do sessions with my students when I was teaching high school and here. So this is kind of old, but you know, you can put anything in a frame and make it look pretty. And this is the piece, Sisters in Arms, and I want you to hold that side because we had talked about this before. Yeah. But I wanted to just share the part that really stuck for me. The edge of our bed was a wide grid where your 15-year-old daughter was hanging, gut sprung, on police wheels, a cablegram nailed to the wood, next to a map of the Western Reserve. I could not return with you to bury the body, reconstruct your nightly cardboards against the seeping Transvaal cold. I could not plant the other limpet mind against a wall at the railroad station, nor carry either of your souls back from the river in a calabash upon my head. So I bought you a ticket to Durban on my American Express, and we lay together in the first light of a new season. If you can carry it, then you're going to hold it for me until the next time I see you. Right? Right? Because I think that's important. We give gifts in really peculiar ways, and I know a lot of persons travel light, but I really would like for you to have this to traverse with and add to some of your pieces as well, yeah? Can we give another resounding warm applause? There are a lot of moving parts. I want to make sure as we get ready to close, it's kind of because we could have easily stayed in this room a little bit longer, had some other snacks, tea, coffee for those that need it, and kept this going. But just keep in mind that we do have another set of concurrent sessions. We have a plenary that's going to start at 3:30. You want to be in this plenary for a variety of reasons. It's going to be on another theme around sustainable economies and around philanthropy and around biotechnology. Check that out, all three in the same room at the same time. And I think it would be very powerful to be able to share some of that input that you all bring to the table around biotechnology, around sustainable economies, as well as philanthropy, because it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and sometimes we don't get to be a part of that. So I think it's important to hear from that and bringing it to the fullness. The other part that I would be remiss is that this evening there's going to be an author celebration. Now I'm going to let people know it's a very intimate space. So if you can come and want to make sure that we support our authors that are bringing their work, and when I say bring it, it's going to be lit. It's going to be lit. And we've already decided that we're going to take over like the first floor of the company house, the hallway coming up the side of company house, all of the conference. They'll just understand. This is a CSA thing, you know, like that's how it go. That they'll be okay, you know. And if they force it, then we might have to do the, you know, the intellectual portion on the inside, and then we're just going to take it to the street. You know what I mean? Y'all make sure you say that quietly so that I don't get in problems, right? But I just want to highlight that'll be from 6 to 8. There are some persons that may not be engaged in the author's celebration, and so there will be Crucian Heritage and Nature Tourism will have some persons available to just give you like more of a historic view of a few of the spots inside of Christiansted Town, or if you just want to go to dinner, free to do so. Keep in mind, and I seem like an infomercial commercial person, the CSA inaugural journal is available for $50. You can go to the secretariat. I'm going to keep saying it because we need one thing. We have about 90 copies, now 75 copies, and I'm not going to, I mean, I could keep them here and like just right, but no. We want to make sure that you all are able to share and really encourage other persons, because there is a portion that goes back to us being able to keep the journal going. And I want to make sure that I put out there, if you did not submit work for consideration in the next issue, please submit some work. You know, because the intention is for CSAers. A lot of times we have people that are not even members that are submitting. So hint subtle. Did you get the hint subtle? Yes. The other portion that I need to make sure that I highlight as well is that there are going to be a series of, make sure you look on the schedule online, because some of the rooms got swapped and some of the presenters haven't come. So we're like updating as we go. So as much as the program itself printed looks beautiful and great, we really want to encourage you to use what's online. There's also, I think they've given me all my instructions. Did I follow everything that I was supposed to do? Did I do everything now? Yes? No? Cassandra, you have to give me my lines. Great. Fantastic. With that being said, thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next concurrent session. We look forward to seeing you for the plenary. Fantastic. And thank you again, Dr. Alexis.